right, guys, thank you for joining me. We are doing lesson 4 today. We're going to be reading the Sirens and Scylla and Charybdis. So again, we're doing the Odyssey, lesson 4, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis. But before we get started, let's talk a little bit about where Odysseus has been, just in case you are following along in your map. And we have just a little recap, and we do this at the beginning and at the end of every video. So we know that the story or the journey started at Troy after he finished the war. So that should be your first location. Your second location should be Ismaris, which is north of Troy. Then your third location is round Malea, and your fourth is past Cythera. Then your fifth location is the land of the lotus eaters. And remember, the lotus eaters did not want to harm Odysseus. They just wanted to feed him that flower that would make him forget about ever returning home. So that's your fifth location. Your sixth location is Cyclops Island. And that was a good story. That's the story with the Cyclopes. And, you know, Odysseus made that spear and he poked out his eye. So that's number 6. Number 7 is Aeolus Island, and the king of Aeolus Island gave Odysseus a sack of winds in order to help him get home. When they were almost home, it was all the winds except for the favorable west wind, right? West wind. And when he was almost home, his men opened the sack and it blew him all the way back to Aeolus Island. So number 7 is Aeolus Island. Number 8 is almost home, and then number 9 is back to Aeolus Island. And then he went to the land of the Lastrygonians, and those were cannibals, right, who basically destroyed all of Odysseus' ship except for one, and that was in number 10. Number 11 was in Aea, right, and then that's where he was with Circe for about a year. And then number 12, he went to the land of the dead where he spoke to Tiresias. And that was our last book. That was the last thing we talked about, him speaking to Tiresias. And now here we are. We're going to be reading the Sirens, and we're going to be reading Scylla and Charybdis. And so let's see where he goes to after Land of the Dead. And so we're going to start by reading the little top intro, because usually that gives us a hint or a clue as to where he goes next. Odysseus returns to Circe's island. The goddess reveals his course to him and gives advice on how to avoid the dangers he will face. The Sirens, who lure sailors to their destruction, the wandering rocks, sea rocks that destroy even birds in flight, the perils of the sea monster Scylla, that's the name of the sea monster, Scylla, and nearby the whirlpool Charybdis. So Scylla is a sea monster, Charybdis is the whirlpool, and the cattle of the sun god, which Tiresias has already warned Odysseus not to harm. So we already know that he should not be harming the cattle of the sun god. But we also know that now, after he left the land of the dead, he went back to Aea. So that is your location number 13, Aea. Okay, and here we go.
As Circe spoke, Dawn mounted her golden throne, and on the first rays Circe left me, taking her way like a great goddess up the island. I made straight for the ship, roused up the men to get aboard and cast off at the stern. They scrambled to their places by the rowlocks, and all in line dipped oars in the great sea. But soon an offshore breeze blew to our liking, a canvas-bellying breeze, a lusty shipmate sent by the singing nymph with sun-bright hair. So we made fast the braces, and we rested, letting the wind and steersman work the ship. The crew being now silent before me, I addressed them, sore at heart. Dear friends, more than one man or two should know those things Circe foresaw for us and shared with me. So let me tell her forecast. Then we die with our eyes open if we are going to die, or know what death we baffle if we can. Sirens, weaving a haunting song over the sea we are to shun, she said, and their green shore all sweet with clover. Yet she urged that I alone should listen to their song. Therefore you are to tie me up, tight as a splint, erect along the mast, lashed to the mast. And if I shout and beg to be untied, take more turns of the rope to muffle me. I rather dwelt on this part of the forecast, while our good ship made time, bound outward down the wind for the strange island of Sirens. Then all at once the wind fell, and a calm came over all the sea, as though some power lulled the swell. The crew were on their feet briskly to furl the sail and stow it. Then, each in place, they poised the smooth oar blades and sent the white foam scudding by. I carved a massive cake of beeswax into bits and rolled them in my hands until they softened. No long task, for a burning heat came down from Helios, lord of high noon. Going forward, I carried wax along the line and laid it thick on their ears. They tied me up then, plumb amidships, back to the mast, lashed to the mast, and took themselves again to rowing. Soon, as we came smartly within hailing distance, the two Sirens, noting our fast ship off their point, made ready, and they sang. This way, O turn your bows, Achaea's glory, as all the world...
Okay, so before we continue, we know that Circe warns Odysseus against the Sirens. She tells Odysseus about the Sirens. She tells him about the wandering rocks. She tells him about the sea monster Scylla, about the whirlpool Charybdis, and she also tells him about the cattle of the sun god, which he already knew. And so the way that Odysseus makes it past the Sirens is he has his men tie him up so that he can hear the song of the Sirens, but the men have beeswax in their ears, so they cannot hear the song. So we're listening right now to the Song of the Sirens, or that's the text that we're reading right now, and we are wondering what effect the siren song is actually going to have on Odysseus. So let's see how he reacts when he hears the song.
Allows more and be merry. Sweet coupled airs we sing, no lonely seafarer holds clear of entering our green mirror. Pleased by each purling note, like honey twining from her throat and my throat, who lies a-pining? Sea rovers here take joy, voyaging onward, as from our song of Troy, greybeard and rower boy goeth more learned. All feats on that great field, in the long warfare, dark days the bright gods willed, wounds you bore there. Argos' old soldiery on Troy beach teeming, charmed out of time we see. No life on earth can be hid from our dreaming. The lovely voices in ardor appealing over the water made me crave to listen, and I tried to say, "Untie me," to the crew, jerking my brows. But they bent steady to the oars. Then Perimedes got to his feet.
So he wanted to be untied. He heard the song and he wanted to go and he wanted to be untied, but the crew did not let him, and they just kept on rowing along. Who tied him up and kept him quiet? So let's see who are the two people that tie him up.
And Eurylochus, and passed more line about to hold me still. So all rowed on, until the Sirens dropped under the sea rim, and their singing dwindled away. My faithful company rested on their oars now, peeling off the wax that I had laid thick on their ears, then set me free.
Okay, so Perimedes and Eurylochus get him and tie him even harder to the mast so that he cannot escape. And so this is how he gets past the Sirens. Now let's hear all about Scylla and Charybdis.
But scarcely had that island faded in blue air than I saw smoke and white water, with sounds of waves in tumult, a sound the men heard, and it terrified them. Oars flew from their hands, the blades went knocking wild alongside till the ship lost way, with no oar blades to drive her through the water. Well, I walked up and down from bow to stern, trying to put heart into them, standing over every oarsman, saying gently, "Friends, have we never been in danger before this? More fearsome is it now than when the Cyclops penned us in his cave. What power he had! Did I not keep my nerve and use my wits to find a way out for us? Now, I say, by hook or crook, this peril too shall be something that we remember. Heads up, lads! We must obey the orders as I give them. Get the oar shafts in your hands and lay back hard on your benches. Hit these breaking seas. Zeus help us pull away before we founder. You at the tiller listen and take in all that I say. The rudders are your duty. Keep her out of the combers and the smoke. Steer for that headland, watch the drift, or we fetch up in the smother and you drown us." That was all, and it brought them round to action. But as I sent them on towards Scylla, I told them nothing, as they could do nothing. They would have dropped their oars again in panic to roll for cover under the decking. Circe's bidding...
So Odysseus has the men focus on Charybdis, the whirlpool, because basically they can't do anything about Scylla, the monster. So there's nothing that they can do about the monster. So he has them focus on this whirlpool and Charybdis, right? And again, Charybdis is the whirlpool and Scylla is the monster.
Against arms had slipped my mind. So I tied on my cuirass and took up 2 heavy spears, then made my way along to the foredeck, thinking to see her first from there, the monster of the grey rock, harbouring torment for my friends. I strained my eyes upon that cliffside veiled in cloud, but nowhere could I catch sight of her. And all this time, in travail, sobbing, gaining on the current, we rowed into the strait, Scylla to port, and on our starboard beam Charybdis, dire gorge of the salt sea tide. By heaven, when she vomited, all the sea was like a cauldron seething over intense fire when the mixture suddenly heaves and rises. The shot spume soared to the landside heights and fell like rain. But when she swallowed the sea-water down, we saw the funnel of the maelstrom, heard the rock bellowing all around, and dark sand raged on the bottom far below. My men all blanched against the gloom. Our eyes were fixed upon that yawning mouth in fear of being devoured. Then Scylla made her strike, whisking 6 of my best men from the ship. I happened to glance aft at ship and...
And so while the men were watching Charybdis, the whirlpool, Scylla took 6 of Odysseus's best men and basically devoured them.
Oarsmen, and caught sight of their arms and legs, dangling high overhead. Voices came down to me in anguish, calling my name for the last time. A man surf-casting on a point of rock for bass or mackerel, whipping his long rod to drop the sinker and the bait far out, will hook a fish and rip it from the surface to dangle wriggling through the air. So these were borne aloft in spasms toward the cliff. She ate them as they shrieked there in her den, in the dire grapple, reaching still for me. And deathly pity ran me through at that sight. Far the worst I ever suffered, questing the passes of the strange sea. We rowed on. The rocks were now behind, Charybdis too, and Scylla dropped astern.
All right, so there we go. He just passed Scylla and Charybdis. And that is it. Oh, let's go over our map so that we know exactly where we are. We said that we left off in the land of the dead last chapter. Then he went back to Aea. And then your next stop should be past the Sirens, right? Because he passes Sirens Island, so that should be 14. And then after 14 should be through Scylla and Charybdis, which is 15. Now past Sirens Island is page 1006, and through Scylla and Charybdis is page 1007. I hope you're keeping track of the pages, because remember, as part of the project, you have to track his route on a map, but then also you have to draw a symbol for each of the locations and find a quote from the text. So for instance, this student has Troy as number 1, and they have Troy, and you can see that the symbol is a Trojan horse, and that is a quote from that part of the text, which is why I'm giving you the page number so that you can go back and easily find your quote. So you're going to do that for all 19 locations. So remember, there are 19 locations, so the project could be complete. You need all 19 locations, you need a quote, you need a symbol, and you need to track his route. Okay, guys, that is it for today. It was a very quick lesson. I will see you guys tomorrow, because tomorrow we will be reading Cattle of the Sun God, which is lesson 5. Now you can also answer the discussion questions for today. All right, guys, have a good one. Take care. Bye.